The spotlight sliced through the smoky haze of the Sans Copa room, a stark white circle on the opulent stage. Inside that circle, a performer, young and earnest, was mid-song, pouring his soul into a melody that shimmered through the hushed room. The audience, a mix of high rollers, celebrities, and the ever-present figures of power, listened with varying degrees of attention. Suddenly, a ripple went through the room. From a VIP table, close enough to the stage to feel the vibrations of the music, a man rose. He was impeccably dressed, his presence commanding, his reputation preceding him like a shadow. This was Mr. V, a name whispered with a certain reverence and fear throughout Las Vegas. With a movement that was both casual and utterly dismissive, Mr. V reached out, his hand closing around the microphone stand. He tugged it away from the singer, the music abruptly cutting out, leaving a jarring silence in its wake. The performer, caught off guard, stood frozen, his mouth still open in song. Mr. V's voice, chillingly calm, carried effortlessly across the now silent room. "This performance," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the singer, "is unworthy of this stage." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, a thinly veiled threat. Then his voice dropped slightly, though still clear. "And you, kid, you just don't have true star quality." It was a personal, demeaning remark, delivered with the cold precision of a surgeon. From a nearby table, Dean Martin sat motionless. He had been nursing a drink, a half-smile playing on his lips moments before. Now, that smile was gone. His eyes, usually warm and twinkling, held a subtle, unreadable shift. It was the only indication that he had registered the insult, the public humiliation unfolding before him. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, but the air around him seemed to tighten. The performer on stage remained a statue of mortification. The sudden silence was amplified by the abrupt cut of the music system, plunging the stage into an awkward, heavy quiet. A murmur spread through the crowd, a low hum of nervous energy. Some guests exchanged quick, uneasy glances, their eyes darting between Mr. V, the humiliated singer, and then, almost instinctively, towards Dean Martin. But no immediate uproar followed. The power dynamics of this town were too well understood. No one dared to challenge Mr. V, not openly, not in his domain. Some humiliations carry a price no one can foresee. Dean Martin slowly, almost imperceptibly, pushed back his chair. The scrape of wood on the carpet was barely audible, lost in the collective tension. His eyes remained fixed on the scene, an unblinking stare that seemed to pierce through the layers of pretense and fear. The room held its breath, wondering what, if anything, would come next. Was this the moment the legendary Dino would intervene? Or would he, like everyone else, simply acknowledge the unspoken rules and let the incident pass? The air crackled with a silent question, a collective anticipation for a reaction that might never come. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Las Vegas in the 1950s and 60s was a place unlike any other, an electric blend of glitter, dreams, and danger. It was a city built on risk and reward, where fortunes were made and lost with the turn of a card or the roll of a dice. The air in the casino showrooms was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, stale cigarette smoke, and the faint metallic tang of money. The clinking of glasses punctuated the murmur of high-stakes conversations, a constant backdrop to the smooth, sophisticated sounds of jazz music that drifted from every corner. Beneath the dazzling lights and endless entertainment, a complex web of power structures held the city together. Reputation was currency, and connections were everything. Everyone knew their place, and everyone understood the unspoken rules that governed this glittering oasis in the desert. Into this world came Tony, a young singer with a voice as smooth as velvet and a heart full of ambition. He arrived in Vegas with nothing but a suitcase, and a dream of seeing his name in lights. Like many hopefuls, he had spent countless hours honing his craft, performing in smoky clubs for meager pay, and navigating the intricate social hierarchy of the entertainment world. His routine was relentless, endless rehearsals, late-night gigs, and the constant pressure to impress. He learned quickly that talent alone wasn't enough. One needed connections, luck, and the ability to charm those who held the keys to stardom. Tony was good, very good, and he had been steadily climbing the ladder, earning a regular spot at one of the Strip's most prestigious venues. He believed he was on the verge of his big break, unaware of the treacherous currents that flowed beneath the city's glamorous surface. Presiding over much of this intricate world was Mr. V, the mob boss, whose presence had just brought the Copa room to a standstill. He was a man of immense, quiet power, his influence permeating every aspect of the city's operations, from the biggest casinos to the smallest backroom deals. He rarely raised his voice, but when he spoke, people listened. His presence in any room commanded immediate respect, and often a palpable fear. Mr. V wasn't just a powerful figure. He was, in many ways, the unacknowledged architect of much of modern Las Vegas, a man whose word was law in the shadows, and sometimes even in the light. He was a connoisseur of entertainment, a patron of the arts. But his patronage came with an invisible price tag and an expectation of absolute deference. Dean Martin, on the other hand, was an icon. He moved through this world with an effortless grace, respected by everyone, from the lowliest dealer to the most feared boss. He bridged the gap between the glitzy entertainment world and the shadowy power structures with a natural charm and an unshakable moral compass. Dino, as he was affectionately known, was a man of principle, but also a pragmatist who understood the delicate dance of power. He saw Mr. V's casual disdain, his capricious nature, and his occasional subtle slights towards those he deemed beneath him. These were not always overt acts of aggression, but rather small, calculated gestures that served as reminders of who held the true power. These moments, often overlooked by others, were the subtle hints of a brewing storm, foreshadowing the kind of public conflict that had just erupted on stage. Dean Martin, with his keen eye and deep understanding of human nature, noticed every one of them. He knew that one day Mr. V's casual cruelty would lead to something more significant. The recent humiliation wasn't an isolated incident, but the culmination of a long-standing pattern of behavior from Mr. V. For years, the Las Vegas entertainment scene had quietly endured his subtle slights and power plays, each one a small chip at the dignity of performers and club owners alike. It was a known fact that a simple suggestion from Mr. V could change an entire set list, or even worse, end a performer's engagement without a word of explanation. His public criticisms, delivered with a chillingly calm demeanor, carried more weight than any formal complaint. He never needed to shout. His quiet disapproval was enough to send shivers down spines and derail careers. There were countless stories whispered backstage, tales of performers who had fallen out of favor after a seemingly innocuous comment from Mr. V. One singer, known for her powerful ballads, was reportedly told her voice was too loud for his delicate ears. Within weeks, her contract wasn't renewed, and she mysteriously found it impossible to find work on the Strip. A popular comedian, whose edgy humor once filled showrooms, suddenly found his routines deemed unsuitable after Mr. V expressed a preference for more family-friendly acts. The comedian vanished from the Vegas circuit almost overnight. These acts were never overtly aggressive. There were no threats, no raised voices. It was always a quiet withdrawal of support, a subtle shift in the winds of influence that left its victims stranded. Tony, the singer now reeling from the public incident, had himself experienced several minor run-ins with Mr. V. He remembered an occasion when Mr. V approached him after a show, complimenting his voice but then adding, "You know, a little less jazz, a little more swing. That's what the people really want." It wasn't a request. It was a veiled command. Tony, like many others, had tried to navigate these interactions with deference, hoping to avoid larger conflicts. He would nod, smile, and make mental notes to adjust his style, all in an effort to stay in Mr. V's good graces. He'd seen what happened to others who didn't. There were also the broken promises, the tantalizing offers of support or investment in careers that Mr. V would capriciously withdraw. A young choreographer was once promised funding for a grand new spectacle, only to have Mr. V pull out at the last minute, leaving the artist deep in debt and his dreams shattered. These instances were not about money for Mr. V, they were about control, about demonstrating his absolute power over the destinies of those around him. He enjoyed the illusion of benevolence, only to snatch it away, reminding everyone of their precarious position. The cumulative effect of these incidents had created an atmosphere of fear and subservience among many in the Vegas entertainment scene. Performers walked on eggshells, constantly aware of Mr. V's presence, real or imagined. The incident on stage with Tony was not an isolated outburst, but the brutal culmination of this long-standing pattern of intimidation. It was a public demonstration of a private terror that had gripped the city's performers for years. Dean Martin had witnessed some of these past incidents. He saw the fear in the eyes of his colleagues, the quiet desperation as careers hung by a thread. He always maintained his composure, his easy smile rarely faltering, but his silent observation hinted at a deep understanding of the city's intricate power dynamics. He knew the moral compromises often demanded, the sacrifices made for a chance at stardom in this glittering, dangerous city. He understood that Mr. V's power was built on fear and that someone, someday, would have to stand up to it. He just hadn't expected it to happen so brazenly or to involve someone like Tony. Following the public humiliation, the tension in Las Vegas became palpable. The incident, though seemingly small to an outsider, sent ripples through the entertainment community like a stone dropped into still water. Whispers spread through the casinos and showrooms, carried on the stale air of cigarette smoke and cheap perfume. Everyone knew what had happened, but few dared to speak openly about it. The collective unease was evident in the hushed conversations that died abruptly when certain figures walked by, in the nervous glances exchanged across card tables and crowded bars. It was as if a silent alarm had gone off, reminding everyone of the precarious balance of power. Performers and club owners alike privately expressed sympathy for Tony. Backstage, in hushed tones, they'd shake their heads, maybe offer a quiet word of encouragement, but none were willing to openly defy Mr. V. The fear of repercussions was too great, too ingrained. The unspoken code of loyalty and terror created a suffocating atmosphere, a heavy blanket that smothered any spark of rebellion. Everyone had seen what happened to those who crossed Mr. V, or even those who simply fell out of his favor. Careers evaporated, opportunities vanished, and the bright lights of Vegas dimmed for them forever. Tony, the humiliated performer, retreated into himself. His confidence, once a vibrant flame, was now a mere ember, flickering weakly in the face of such public scorn. He spent his days holed up in his small apartment, the vibrant sounds of the strip outside his window now feeling like a mocking symphony. He faced a profound crisis of self-worth. Was Mr. V right? Did he truly lack star quality? The doubt gnawed at him, a relentless parasite. He considered leaving Las Vegas, packing his bags and going back to wherever he came from, feeling the crushing weight of the city's judgment and Mr. V's immense power pressing down on him. The dream he had chased so fiercely now felt like a cruel joke. The vibrant, glittering facade of Las Vegas, once so alluring, now felt oppressive. The neon lights that had once promised excitement and glamour now seemed to mock his despair, their dazzling glow highlighting his own dimming hopes. The incessant clinking of slot machines, usually a cheerful soundtrack to the city's endless party, now sounded hollow, a metallic echo of his own emptiness. Even the ever-present jazz music, which had always stirred his soul, took on a melancholic tone, each note a lament, reflecting Tony's internal despair. The city, once a beacon of opportunity, had become a cage. Throughout this period, Dean Martin remained outwardly composed. He continued his performances at the Sands, his public appearances as effortless and charming as ever. There was no hint of distress in his easy smile, no flicker of anger in his eyes. He sang his songs, told his jokes, and clinked glasses with the high rollers just as he always did. Yet his silence was not indifference. It was a calculated, strategic calm, a sign of a mind at work, planning a response that transcended mere anger. Dean Martin knew that an open confrontation would be foolish, playing right into Mr. V's hands. He understood the intricate dance of power in this city, and he knew that sometimes the most powerful moves were the quietest ones. He was biding his time, observing and waiting for the perfect moment to act. Days after the incident, a buzz started circulating through the Vegas grapevine. Dean Martin, the king of cool himself, had announced a special, unadvertised appearance. It wasn't at the Copa Room, his usual haunt, but at a different, equally prestigious casino showroom, a direct rival. This was unusual. Dean didn't do impromptu shows unless there was a reason, and everyone knew it. Insiders whispered about the peculiar nature of this sudden performance, which quickly became the talk of the town. People scrambled for tickets, curious what Dean had up his sleeve. Was it a new song, a new act, or something else entirely? The night of the show, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. The showroom was packed, a who's who of Las Vegas society, including many of the same faces who had witnessed Tony's humiliation. Dean Martin took the stage, not with a microphone in hand ready to sing, but with a casual, almost contemplative air. He began to deliver a seemingly off-the-cuff monologue. He spoke about the soul of entertainment, about the dignity of the artist, and the true spirit of Las Vegas. His voice was smooth, his delivery effortless, but every word was carefully chosen, a subtle jab, avoiding direct accusations, but clearly referencing the recent humiliation that had cast a shadow over the city's glittering facade. He talked about how a stage was sacred, a place where dreams were either made or broken, and how true artistry deserved respect, not scorn. Then, to the surprise of many, he paused. He looked towards the wings, a slight smile playing on his lips, and called Tony, the humiliated performer, onto the stage. A ripple of murmurs went through the audience. Tony, looking nervous but determined, walked out, blinking in the bright lights. Dean Martin didn't ask him to sing. Instead, he simply handed Tony the microphone, a silent, powerful gesture. Then he stood beside him, a pillar of solidarity and respect, his presence alone, a shield against any further indignity. It was a visual statement, a clear message delivered without a single accusatory word. Dean Martin then spoke again, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed room. He subtly praised Tony's unseen courage and unwavering dedication to his craft. He spoke of the grit it took to stand on a stage, night after night, pouring one's heart out. He highlighted the vulnerability of a performer, subtly condemning the act of public degradation without ever naming Mr. V. The audience, comprising many influential figures who understood the unspoken language of power in Vegas, was left to interpret the unspoken message. It was a masterclass in social engineering, a public endorsement of an artist who had been publicly shamed. Mr. V, who was indeed present in the audience, was visibly uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, his usual stoic expression faltering for just a moment. He knew what this was. This wasn't a direct attack, but it was far more damaging. It was a social pressure delivered with such finesse by Dean Martin that it struck at the very core of his reputation. It was a public challenge to his authority, a quiet rebuke delivered by a man whose standing in Vegas was unassailable. He couldn't directly retaliate without losing face, without appearing petty and small. Dean Martin had outmaneuvered him, not with force, but with dignity and undeniable social currency. The atmosphere in the room had shifted, and everyone felt it. The aftermath of Dean Martin's subtle intervention quickly unfolded, revealing the full impact of his meticulously planned actions. The shift in the city's social currents was almost immediate, a testament to the weight of Dean Martin's influence. Tony, now openly supported by a figure of such immense respect, experienced a rapid resurgence. The whispers of his humiliation faded, replaced by talk of Dean Martin's endorsement. Other influential figures in the entertainment industry, taking their cue from Martin, began to offer Tony gigs and opportunities. Bookings that had dried up suddenly reappeared. His phone, once silent, now rang constantly with offers from club owners eager to align themselves with the positive attention Dean Martin had generated. Tony's career, which had seemed destined for an early end, was not just rehabilitating, it was flourishing. He found himself performing in better venues, to more appreciative crowds, his confidence slowly but surely returning with each applause. Mr. V, on the other hand, faced a silent but significant social consequence. While his raw power and financial holdings remained largely untouched, his reputation as a man of honor within certain circles was subtly but irrevocably diminished. People still feared him, but the fear was now tinged with a quiet disdain, especially among those who valued artistry and integrity. Insiders began to notice that his suggestions about performers became less frequent, his public presence slightly less imposing. He was no longer seen as untouchable in matters of artistic integrity. His influence, once absolute in all aspects of the city's entertainment, now had a clear boundary. He couldn't bully artists without facing the kind of social pushback Dean Martin had orchestrated, a pushback he couldn't openly fight. The incident served as a powerful reminder that even in a city of immense power and shadowy dealings, moral courage and dignity could hold sway. Dean Martin's calm, non-violent response demonstrated that true influence lay not in brute force, but in unwavering principle and social standing. It was a victory not of strength, but of character. Tony, with his career not just back on track, but ascending to new heights, often reflected on the profound lesson he had learned. He understood that genuine respect was earned through talent and perseverance, not demanded through fear. He realized that defending one's dignity, even in the face of overwhelming power, was paramount. Dean Martin had shown him that standing tall, even when silent, could speak volumes. Tony continued to perform, but with a newfound depth and resilience, forever grateful for the man who had stood by him. The story concludes with Dean Martin, a figure of quiet strength and enduring legend, continuing his life in Las Vegas. His actions that night reinforced his reputation as a man who always stood for what was right, not with a shout, but with a knowing glance and a powerful unspoken gesture. He moved through the glittering casinos and smoky showrooms, a beacon of integrity in a city often defined by its moral ambiguities. He never spoke publicly about the incident again, letting his actions speak for themselves. His legacy grew, not just as an entertainer, but as a man who understood the true meaning of respect and loyalty. The narrative ends with a powerful, intimate reflection on the enduring themes of respect, dignity, and the subtle yet profound ways in which justice can be served. It leaves the audience to ponder the enduring power of moral authority in a world often dominated by less noble forces. It reminds us that sometimes the loudest statements are made in the quietest moments, and the greatest victories are won not with fists, but with unwavering principle and the courage to simply stand beside someone.